Fuck you! Fuck you! Shoot! Let them shoot, let them shoot. No problem! No problem! Everyone sit down, sit down, sit down!
Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Discourse. I am Precious Chukudi, and here on Lunchtime Discourse we're going to be talking about the Lekki shootings and managing the conflicting issues surrounding it. And joining me to talk about this today is Mr. Chris Adetayo. He's international public and international affairs commentator, and he writes also from Lagos. Good afternoon, Mr. Chris Adetayo.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's just talk about the Lekki shootings. It's been a week, more than a week right now after it happened, and there's been a lot of conflicting reports on what happened. Some people say it happened. Some people are saying that it looks like something that the video clips that were going around was from a movie scene. Different things that are really conflicting in the minds of Nigerians as to what really even happened on that day. But I would like to ask you, what exactly do you think happened that night?
Oh well, it's 8-9 days now. Some facts we already know. We know that for 2 weeks before that incident, there were several Nigerians, youth especially, who had come out the Lekki toll gate in the name of the End SARS protest. They were seeking the Nigerian government's intervention in matters relating to police brutality, which has been long running, and is probably an experience that many Nigerians can speak to. We also know that on Tuesday, that very day, the government of Lagos imposed a curfew, probably giving people 3 to 4 hours. The curfew was due to start for 4 p.m., later extended to 9 p.m. So those are two facts we know. We also know that in the early evening of that day, the Lekki toll gate, which had enjoyed full lighting all through the duration of the protest, suddenly was bathed in darkness. The lights were switched off. All the various electronic and electrical facilities that the protesters had enjoyed all the while were suddenly taken off. And not long after, from available evidence, we also know that the military showed up before the curfew was due to take effect. Curfew was due to take effect 9 p.m. The military showed up a couple of hours before then, and there's confirmation of that from the governor of Lagos State himself. We also know that there were shots fired, and that in the ensuing situation, many people ended up in hospital. We also now have confirmed reports of people killed. When you take all of that together, that speaks to a failure in the management of civil protests by the authorities, and it's one that basically shames Nigeria. The protests were never violent at the Lekki toll gate. The protesters had gone out of their ways to ensure that it was very peaceful. They even went to the length of cleaning up after themselves every day while the protest lasted, and they never made any trouble. And what's more, the protests were done under the banner of Nigeria. They were waving Nigerian flags, daily singing the Nigerian national anthem. So really, the last set of people who should suffer from any brutality arising from protesting should be those people who are the Lekki toll gate. And that's the reason why we need to get to the bottom of what happened that night, who deployed soldiers, why they chose to use guns as a means of dispersing a peaceful crowd, and especially when the curfew had not really taken effect. Those for me really are questions that we must continue to ask of the government. Why did it require strong arm tactics to disperse a peaceful crowd that hadn't given any trouble for 2 weeks or more that it had been camped out there?
All right, before now, the governor basically said that he didn't know anything about military being deployed up until about 2 days ago when he mentioned that in an interview. And also the army has still stuck with what they said, which is the fact that, they weren't there, and the video was photoshopped, So with these conflicting reports from both the governor and also the army, what exactly do you think is happening in that situation, really?
Well, I think that what's playing out is a recognition of the public's reaction to the events of that particular night. In times past, it probably would have been easy for the government to get away with, disseminating false information about what happened that night. But there were enough evidence online. Somebody had the whole incident recorded and shown live on Instagram Live. There were a lot of pictorial evidence as well. So obviously we were all surprised that the army initially said there were no soldiers present, and it took them almost a week to finally admit that yes, there were soldiers present. And of course, there were also initial denials of gunshots, initial denials of death, and so on. And in a way, we must give kudos to the Nigerian youth and the Nigerians and the Nigerian nation at large for pressing on this matter to the point now where the military authorities as well as the government has finally owned up to the fact that indeed soldiers were deployed, indeed shots were fired, and people died unjustly for simply protesting, which is a constitutional right guaranteed to every Nigerian. And in a way, we must continue to take the government to task, because there is still a lot that is unclear about the incident that happened that very evening. Why did they have to deploy soldiers? And given that, while it is true that there was trouble in other parts of Lagos, Igomo, Surulere, and so on, there was no trouble at the Lekki toll gate. For 2 weeks on, there had been no trouble whatsoever. So why was it necessary to deploy soldiers to the Lekki toll gate? And why was it necessary for the soldiers to be? Who gave the order for the soldiers to use military weapons as a means of dispersing a peaceful crowd? Those questions we must continue to ask. It's a good thing that the panel instituted by the Lagos State government to look into the SARS, the NSAS protest, has also been given the responsibility of investigating the incidents on that day. Nigerians must now remain vigilant in seeing how the panel proceeds with its work, that it is given free hand, that all information and every necessary person invited shows up, and that we don't end up with a similar situation like we had during the Okuta panel some 20 years ago, when people were invited and they ran to seek cover of the courts. The events of last week must be a watershed. Yes.
All right, as a nation, what exactly do you think we should be looking at in the interest of Nigeria?
Well, I mean, for going forward, the barest minimum is, there are a number of things that arise from from the incident last week. Number one, peaceful protest is a right, it's a constitutional right, and all our authorities, both government and military and civilian authorities, need to recognize that protesting peacefully is a right granted to every Nigerian by the Constitution. Secondly, even when it comes to the point where it is necessary to disperse crowds, that should not be done using armed weapons that could end up injuring and potentially even killing the protesters. Those two really are key things that we must take forward from the incidents of last week. That we have people protesting and they ended up, losing their lives for doing nothing that wasn't under the law.
All right, there's been a lot of public outcry with this particular Lekki shootings rather, and we've seen the likes of the Ali must go. Why exactly do we have this kind of public outcry other than how usually people would just say, okay, something happened and that's all, and then move on?
Well, this isn't going away. Number one, the people involved, the young generation, the millennial generation, have the personal power that older generations didn't have. They have access to the media. In times past, it was possible for government using its exclusive ownership of the media to shut down information and communication about events happening around the country. That's no longer possible. Even with all the efforts made to quieting down all the inquiries about last week's incidents, there was enough information on the social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so on, that kept the issue burning and forced the government, like we already all know, to finally admit that yes, soldiers were deployed and yes, people got killed. And so it's a result of the technological age that we live in and the social media age that we live in, and people being able to have access to the media in various formats means that authorities, both civil and military, can simply no longer get away with hiding facts from the public.
All right, speaking about the social media age and the fact that we're operating under a technological period, do you think in any way that the social media, in a way, sort of blew the situation going on ground out of proportion, made it look so big that people thought that so many things was really happening, and as a result of that, it resulted into violence in different places or different parts of the country?
You could look at this in multiple ways. The key positive for me, I want to look at it I start with the positive. The key positive really is that it compelled government to step forward and admit that indeed wrong had been done in managing a peaceful protest at the toll gate. While indeed it's possible to also make the point that the availability of multiple media platforms help to make the whole situation emotive, leading many people to pile up, wondering how it was possible under the civilian and under a democracy to have soldiers shooting at unarmed citizens. That's a positive we must take away, to say to ourselves, it gives us a platform to build on, meaning that nothing can really be hidden from the people, and no government can have its way in hiding information, especially about public events. The flip side, obviously, that it provides, social media will also provide a platform for negatives to happen. However, ultimately, the credit, social media is a greater credit to the Nigerian society than it is a negative. and we must not, because it's possible for people to use it negatively, therefore begin to think around how to curb its use. That would be a negative way to look at how this media helps in the development of the Nigerian nation.
And okay, yeah, about yesterday, the judicial panel started, and I don't know if you've been following up with it, but what exactly do you think that Nigerians would be expecting, and how would Nigerians be pleased by this judicial panel?
Well, the first thing that Nigerians would expect is transparency, meaning that the work of the panel is transparent, and a good way to assure this is its freedom and independence from any powerful interest, be it government or private. The panel must be independent, all its work must be guided by transparency. Another way to assure this is to ensure that there's free access to the public in everything that goes on with the panel's work. So the public must have free access to watch what is going on at the panel sitting. Thirdly, and this is very important, I made the point earlier on about what happened with the Okuta panel 2 decades ago, when several key players in the military era went to seek court cover that enabled them to avoid appearing at the Okuta panel. That must not be allowed to happen now. Whoever the panel seeks to invite to come and answer questions and inquiries, the government must use the full instrumentality of the law to ensure that such people make such appearances and offer us their own side of the story. It's extremely important, be they police officers, civil servants, military officers, whoever they may be, insofar as there is the reason to ask them to make an appearance at the panel to answer questions, the government must leave no stone unturned to ensure that they make such appearances. That is a critical way of assuring the public that the panel's work is not simply a jamboree aimed at quote unquote covering up trails of what has already happened.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Chris Adetayo, Public and International Affairs commentator. Thank you for joining us today on Lunchtime Discourse.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
All right, you can remember to equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen, as well as you can go on our website www.vanguardngr.com to check our top stories at the very minute. Till I come your way next time, I remain Precious Tripoli. Thank you for watching.
But they still took me away to collect money. I couldn't get everything, but I gave them 10,000 naira just for me to be able to travel down to the concert. So we are out here today because we want to enter. We wanted to do something. When Okada people, they said they were aiming robbery, they banned them from moving. But now we are saying we want an end to SARS because they are brutalizing and harassing us. And yet they are telling us that they can't end it. We want to end SARS today. This is why we are here, and we are sleeping here. We are not moving.